Making your first $1 million, that is a game of pure offense. It's all about taking risks, chasing growth, and accumulating as much as you can. But keeping that million, well, that's a whole different ballgame. So today, we're not going to talk about how to get rich. We're going to talk about the much harder, much more important challenge of how to stay rich. And this slide right here really breaks down that shift in thinking. Getting there, that's your offense. You're focused on growth, you're taking calculated risks. But once you cross that seven-figure threshold, the game completely flips. Now it's all about defense. Your priorities change. You're not thinking about accumulation, you're thinking about preservation. You're not just taking risks, you're thinking about protection and being prudent. Believe me, wealth is way more fragile than you think. And the strategies to keep it are completely different from the ones you use to build it.
So that brings us to the core idea for this entire explainer: building a financial fortress. I want you to literally picture this. Think of your wealth as a castle, and that castle is under constant siege from all sides. We're talking lawsuits, market crashes, inflation, taxes, you name it. Your goal is no longer just to pile more gold into the treasury. Nope. Your goal is to build thick stone walls, dig a deep moat, and post guards on the towers to protect what you've already built. So how do we actually build this fortress? Well, here's the blueprint. These are the 6 rules. We're going to start with building that legal foundation, then shore it up with tax efficiency. After that, we'll talk about smart diversification, balancing your cash with your growth investments, and finally, making sure your legacy lasts. All right, let's start laying some stone. All right, rule number 1, and this is the absolute foundation of your fortress: building a legal wall around your assets. This is the most critical first step. Seriously, without this, one single lawsuit, just one, could make the whole thing you've built come crumbling down. So what exactly is asset protection? Well, think of it like this. It's the art of legally drawing a big, thick line in the sand. On one side of that line, you've got all your personal stuff: your family home, your savings account, your car. And on the other side, you put your riskier assets: your business, your rental properties, things like that. The whole goal is to structure things so that if something goes horribly wrong on the risky side, say a tenant sues you, the creditors can't legally cross that line and come after your personal wealth. So what are the tools you actually use for this? Let's break down the big 3. First up, the LLC. This is the absolute workhorse for assets like rental properties. It creates what's called a legal veil. If a tenant slips and falls and decides to sue, they're suing the LLC, not you personally. They can only go after what's inside that LLC, not your family home. Corporations do a similar thing, but they're usually for more active businesses. And then you have the big guns, your revocable trusts. These offer the highest level of protection because you're literally transferring legal ownership of the asset to the trust. And if you don't technically own it anymore, well, a lawsuit can't take it from you. Okay, but listen up, because this is the #1 mistake people make, and it can undo everything. It's called commingling funds. You can never, ever mix your personal and your business money. If you set up an LLC for your rental property, but then use the LLC's bank card to buy your personal groceries, you've got a huge problem. A judge can look at that and say, hey, you're not treating this like a real business, so we're not going to either. They can pierce the corporate veil, and poof, just like that, that legal wall you built evaporates and all your personal assets are right back on the table. Now for rule number 2, mastering tax efficiency. Look, if lawsuits are like a direct cannonball attack on your fortress, taxes are like a slow, steady leak that drains your resources year after year. Millionaires don't just focus on what they earn, they are absolutely obsessed with what they get to keep. Okay, let's walk through a really powerful strategy called tax loss harvesting. It sounds complicated, but it's not. Let's say this year you sold stock A, and you made a nice $10,000 profit. Awesome. But the government sees that as a $10,000 capital gain, and they want their cut. But you're a smart defender of your fortress. You look at your portfolio and see another investment, stock B, that's currently down $8,000. So you make a strategic move, you sell stock B, and intentionally realize that loss. You're basically turning a loss that was just on paper into an actual real loss that the IRS has to recognize. And here's where the magic happens. You take that $8,000 loss from stock B and you use it to cancel out most of the $10,000 gain from stock A. So what's your final taxable gain? Just $2,000. You just legally and brilliantly slashed your tax bill, keeping thousands of dollars in your pocket, working for you, instead of sending it to the government. And speaking of taxes, another huge strategy is just, well, it's patience. The tax code massively rewards people who invest for the long term. Look at this.
If you buy a stock and sell it within a year, that profit is considered short-term, and it's taxed at your regular high-income tax rate, could be up to 37%. But if you just hold on to that same exact stock for one day longer than a year, it becomes a long-term gain, and suddenly the tax rate plummets to a much lower preferential rate. That simple act of waiting can literally save you a fortune in taxes.
All right, rule number 3. Now, we've all heard that old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? But when you're protecting $1 million, strategic diversification is way more sophisticated than that. It's about building a portfolio that can take a hit from any direction and still remain standing.
So what does a truly diversified portfolio look like? Well, it's a mix like this. You own different types of assets that behave differently. You have US and international stocks for growth. You have bonds, which often act as a cushion and go up when stocks go down. You own real estate, which is great protection against inflation. And you have alternatives, things like gold or other commodities, that have almost no connection to what the stock market is doing. The whole point is to own things that don't all go up or down for the same reason. So let me ask you a question. Let's say you're trying to be safe. So you buy 5 different tech mutual funds. You own hundreds, maybe thousands of different companies through those funds. So you're diversified, right?
The answer is a big, fat no. And this slide explains the most important concept here: correlation. Those 5 tech funds are all highly correlated. That means when something bad happens to the tech sector, they all tend to fall down together at the same time. It's like having 5 copies of the same key. True diversification is about owning assets with low correlation. It's about owning a mix of tech, but also healthcare and consumer staples and industrial companies. That way, when one part of the economy is struggling, another part is likely doing just fine, which smooths out your ride and protects your capital. Okay, let's tackle the next 2 roles together, because they're really 2 sides of the same coin. It's all about a delicate balancing act, the tension between having cash ready when you need it, which is liquidity, and making sure that cash doesn't slowly become worthless over time, which is growth. This quote right here perfectly nails rule number 4. Being asset-rich and cash-poor is one of the most dangerous positions you can be in. It means all your money is tied up in things that are hard to sell quickly, like real estate or your business. So what happens if a medical emergency hits? Or what if the market crashes and presents a once-in-a-decade buying opportunity? You're stuck. You can't do anything. That's why millionaires always maintain a healthy amount of liquidity, a big cash reserve, for 2 reasons: for emergencies and for what they call an opportunity fund, so they have dry powder ready to buy great assets when everyone else is panic selling. But here's the flip side. If you hold too much cash, you run into another enemy, a silent one: inflation. Just look at this chart. It's terrifying. Your $1 million today is not going to be worth $1 million in the future. Assuming a pretty normal 3% inflation rate, in just 10 years, that $1 million only has the purchasing power of about $744,000. And in 20 years, it's cut almost in half. It can only buy what about $550,000 buys today. Your money is literally losing value every single day it just sits there. And that right there is the core of rule number 5. It's a simple but brutal truth of finance. To protect your wealth, it absolutely must grow faster than inflation, period. You have to earn a positive, real rate of return. This is why millionaires don't just bury cash in the backyard. They invest the vast majority of it in things that have a long history of beating inflation, like stocks and real estate. Remember this: if your net worth isn't growing, it's actually shrinking. Okay, this brings us to the final and maybe most important piece of our fortress. Rule number 6, planning your lasting legacy. This is the capstone. This is what ensures that after a lifetime of hard work building this fortune, it gets passed on according to your wishes, not the government's random rulebook. Just look at the difference here. This is what happens to your estate depending on whether you have a plan or you don't. If you die intestate, that's the legal term for having no will or trust, you give up all control. A state court judge who doesn't know you or your family gets to decide who gets what. And the whole process, called probate, is public for anyone to see. It's incredibly expensive, and it can drag on for years. But with a well-designed trust, you are in complete control. Your instructions are followed to the letter, the process is private, it's fast, it's efficient, and you ensure that your legacy is preserved exactly the way you want it. The choice is pretty stark, isn't it? So what's the big takeaway from all of this? It's that protecting this kind of wealth is absolutely not a do-it-yourself job. This isn't something you learn on a weekend. The truly wealthy build a team of trusted professionals around them. They have a savvy attorney to build the legal fortress, a sharp CPA who's a wizard with the tax code, and a prudent financial advisor to manage the investments. This team, this is your personal council of guardians for the fortress.
And that leaves us with one final thought, and it really sums up this entire mindset shift we've been talking about. Building wealth is the work of the hunter. It's about the thrill of the chase, the risk, the pursuit. But protecting wealth, that's the quiet, patient, disciplined work of the guardian, standing watch over the fortress day in and day out. The real challenge isn't just making a fortune. The real challenge is making sure it lasts.